Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to today's KKE on software compliance. We've got a couple things that we're going to be discussing with you today related to software compliance. One of the, I find, least used features that customers would love to have and take advantage of that I see when I do these traveling trainings. Right, a lot of people are interested in this, so we're going to break this down for you, and then we'll give you a demonstration if you have any questions. Before we do that, I do have a couple slides I do at least want to mention. The first one, and although this program has ended for the year, the Backyard Boot Camp we just finished up in Austin a couple weeks ago, right before last week's Dell World. And this is a traveling program. We'll bring our equipment around. It's 4 days of training, really tailored towards those who might be brand new to the appliances or maybe haven't been trained in a few years. But what I'd like to note is that we're going to be planning for next year, right? So if you have any comments or concerns or any feedback that you would love to give, maybe you attended it and like to give us some feedback, or maybe you're looking forward to it and maybe have some ideas for where you would like us to go and see what cities we can go to. You can see where we went this year. Please feel free to get us some feedback. You can email the KKE team at case.com if you'd like, and we'll take that feedback over when we start planning for the new year. All right, but we will be back next year, and we'll be giving you the information here as well once we do have some details. Okay, this KKE is also going to be the last of our 6.4 related KKEs, as there were some kind of changes to the way that the KKEs work. I mean, the software compliance works in 6.4, but you can see going back over a month since our What's New in K1, you can see we had a whole series of KKEs dedicated to 6.4, which was released around the same time as that What's New session. If you have not already updated to 6.4, you might want to take a look at some of these KKEs just to get an idea of what types of things are going to change and what features are being added before you go ahead and upgrade. Okay, some resources you should be aware of. So support.software.dell.com. This is basically your one-stop shop for everything that you'll need case. So our knowledge base is there. Any resources to download, it includes new versions and utilities and things like that. You can also get additional information on training, which we'll touch on in just a moment. You'll find lots of different documentation. You'll also find the video tutorials, which are the recordings of these KKEs. Not only are they in the video tutorial section, but when you do a search in the knowledge base, you'll also get the KKEs as well, because they might be relevant to the topic at hand. Over to the right, we've got itninja.com, obviously our community-based site for answers to lots of your questions, as well as tips and tricks for deploying of software. A new link that we want everyone to be aware of, software.dell.com/case training. This is where you can find out about all the different programs that we offer for case training. That includes our Jumpstart training, our Backyard Boot Camp, these KKEs, as well as our InkPad, which is a monthly or so newsletter that we send out from the training team. Case.uservoice.com. Cannot recommend this site enough. I know a lot of us, mention it quite a lot, but I do recommend using it. This is where our product teams will go when looking for your feedback as to what kinds of things you'd like to see in the appliances. So make sure you go out there, vote for the things that you want, as well as add anything new and get your fellow colleagues to vote on them. All right, our product teams absolutely do go to this site and are looking at this every week, looking for information on how to properly plan for future releases. I already mentioned it, but case.com/newsletter, again, that you can get past editions of our newsletter as well as sign up for new ones. And then our Case Connect program. So Case Connect is a free program. This is also a community-based site where we'll have you do all sorts of neat things and going out on social media. Last week at Dell World, if you took a selfie with a few different trainers, you got points for doing so in the program, right? So it's a very social kind of thing. You get points, and you can trade those points in for free stuff. And everybody likes free stuff. I know that I believe the last contest they were actually doing a raffle for tablets, a Dell tablet. So nice prizes sometimes. We'll also give out some free training, things like on occasion. That is a link for you guys to join. Another reason to join the Case Connect program is that you will get sneak peeks into future releases of the appliance. So our Case Connect customers were able to see the 6.4 release several months before we released it and showed everything through our KKE program. So if for nothing else, that's a great place to kind of start to get information ahead of time. And let me throw some links into the chat window for you here for all those things. And there we go. All righty. All right, next. All right, so, and missed one here, but what we're going to be going over is just a couple of different things. And first, we're going to just talk about what is license compliance and how does that work and how do we add licenses and things like that. And then we're going to move on to metering and application control, which does tie in to the entire concept of software compliance and so on. And then we'll open it up for some Q&A and demo if anyone has any questions or wants to see anything. Before we get to that point, though, I do want to just point out the current versions of our products. And if you see anything that we show here, it will be these specific versions here. So over on the left-hand side, we've got our K1000, obviously brand new version 6.4, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And you can see the full release version there, as well as the Case Agent bundle version. Right, so that make sure that you are up to date there. We have our K2000, which had its 3.7 release earlier this year, as well as a Service Pack 1, and then a hot fix on top of that. Highly recommend if you have a K2, making sure you get all the way up to that hot fix, as that will be the jumping off point for our next release. And then we have our K1000 Go app, which was also updated for 6.4. You can see it's version 2.4. And this was coinciding with 6.4 as it has some additional features that are enabled if you are working with 6.4 server. Right, I'm going to throw some links in the chat window there if you have not already updated. Obviously, take a look at those links, read the release notes, watch the What's New in 6.4. KKE, because we're going to talk about making sure proper steps before upgrading, backing up, things like that. All right, but okay. Now a little bit about 6.4 here, right? And we've just been kind of stressing this point here throughout all of the 6.4 KKEs, just so everyone is aware, is that 6.4 has not yet been localized to non-English languages. So if you are running a non-English language, right, this would not be a good update just yet, unless you are prepared to move back to English permanently until such time that we release our language update to the appliance. So you can see the admin console, user portal, right, all their documentation and so on will be in English only, right? There will certain things that will continue to be in the localized languages, like reboot messages and snooze alerts and things like that, right? But as far as the usability of the UIs and so on, those have not been localized yet, and then we are looking at a future release in order to do so. Just keep in mind that if you do update, right, there is no rollback mechanism in place, right? So we will, if you are in a localized language, the 6.4 update should not actually want to proceed unless you switch it to English, in which case it will allow you to update, but there's no way to go back, right? So you don't want to necessarily do something that will be problematic for your environment. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're planning your 6.4 update if you are a non-English language UI. And I'd like to thank John for throwing some links in the chat window there. He put two What's New KKEs in there, one that we did for the US side, and one that we did for the EMEA side, which is a European side of things. And they're both excellent and recommend both of them. Keep in mind, right, it has all the new features. It's kind of like an overview as well as some information about, proper backing up and upgrading and things like that. So you can see those links in your chat window. So thank you again, John.
No problem. One thing I would say, the EMEA session runs about an hour and a half. I had enough time to get through everything, and that was probably, I think, the fourth or fifth time I did that kind of presentation, so it's a bit more polished. So for those of you who don't mind hearing some accents at the beginning, as our EMEA counterparts are doing the initial presentation, I would recommend the EMEA KKE session as your primary.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John.
Sure.
Okay, so now let's get to some meat here today, right? So let's talk about software compliance. And again, we're going to talk about this just from a high level for a moment, right? So basically the idea of software compliance, it allows you to properly track and see all the licenses that you have in your environment, because sometimes it's hard to know, who's using what application? Are they allowed to use what application? Do we have enough licenses to track all of that? Do we have an audit coming up? And I need to make sure and show and prove, right, that I am tracking licenses and keeping on top of things, right? So inside the K1000, software licensing since 5.5, which is a few years now, has really just been a few clicks. Right, and you now have software licensing working inside the K1000. There's a couple different things that, kind of combine here, right? So the first is you kind of have your inventory and your software inventory and software catalog. The K1000, using its agent, knows what your machines have on them. Right, we know what software is there. We have the software catalog, which we'll explain a little bit more about in a second. Right, the software catalog is it's not just a raw list like your software inventory would be, right? But the K1 knows that certain applications make up a suite of applications, right? It's also able to give you breakdowns of, all of the minor versions of a specific version of application, roll them all up together so that you can kind of report on everything together, see who has what, right?
The nice thing about the software catalog too, just so you guys understand where the information in it is coming from, it's populated by the Dell application catalog. So based on the software that the agent detects on your machines, you can easily see different details and aspects about the software based on the information that's in the software catalog. You don't have to worry about going through and, as Andrew said, keeping track of which titles are within a suite, or even with 6.4, as we'll see later, some of the other information specific to software titles, such as how much it costs or when it was released or expired.
Yep, excellent. And what's nice about the software catalog as well is it's constantly being updated by the K1. Right, you're getting this new listing just about every day. As we get new information in, we'll constantly be updating it on our side, and then you'll get that on your side. So it is a constantly evolving and changing list of applications, so that, like John was saying, right, we know all of these things about these applications. Let's give that to you. Now we're going to combine that information with what the K1000 knows, right, and now we have a good and complete picture of what is out there in our environment. right? We also then get to combine what we call a license asset, right? And a license asset, which we'll see in a few moments, right, allows us to say we have so many licenses of X application, and we'll get more into that in a few moments, right? But then we combine those two things together. We know what you have, and we know how many licenses now that you have of specific applications. Let's combine those two together and give you a complete picture of what your licensed situation is. Right? It's kind of like an audit, right, inside the K1 in a way, right? And then we can report on that. We've got plenty of reports, several of them canned, already built and ready to go. You can always create your own custom reports as well. We also have a new kind of tab in the K1000 to kind of give you quick one window kind of reporting as well, which we'll give you a little screenshot of in just a moment. Right, but the idea here is that it is very simple and very straightforward to get going, and no reason not to use this in your environment. Everyone's got at least a few licenses of something, right? There's no reason not to kind of start tracking that information inside the K1. Sometimes you never know, and you don't want to find out, on audit day, right, that you didn't kind of keep track of things here. All right, so let's kind of take a little bit of a look at the software catalog here and see what exactly that we're talking about here. So you can see we've just kind of showed you a picture here of the software catalog, and I showed you the breakdown of the inventory module just to kind of point out the difference that software catalog is a separate section than the software inventory, right? Software inventory is just a raw listing of all the applications listed on your computers, right? Whereas software catalog is a roll-up, right? And we're going to see the master versions of software. We're going to see suites, right? And then we can kind of get that list there. And software catalog is where, which we'll be talking about later on, which is where you can do metering as well as application control, the blacklist applications. Right, so just remember it is a separate section. All right, so that's your software catalog. And if you'll notice in the software catalog, in my screenshot here, you can see I've got three kind of sections. I've got discovered, I've got not discovered, and I have uncatalogued, right? And as John was saying, right, this is our Dell application catalog, and we are sending you, here's a list of 55 some odd thousand applications that we are aware of. And what the K1 is doing is it's saying of those 55,000, we have discovered so many of them, and then what is left is in the not discovered. Okay, so anything that's in our catalog that you also have is under discovered. Anything that's in our catalog that you do not have is not discovered. Anything that we are not aware of that you might have, right? Maybe you created your own custom in-house application. Right? Maybe Dell is not aware of that. Right? That would go in the uncatalogued section. And the important point of these three tabs is that if anything is not in the discovered section, you can't do all of the licensing and metering and application control and all those kinds of things. It's got to be in the discovered section. We do have a mechanism, very straightforward, very easy. Anyone's curious today, I can show them during a demo, right, of how to move something from uncatalogued over to discovered. And you can also even choose to say, all right, and send that information to Dell so that we can also include that into future releases of our software catalog. All right. So purpose here, right, just make sure everything gets moved into discovered so that you can start working with it. All right.
And one thing to add to that, in 6.4, there was a new column added to the software catalog page. The column is called Catalog. And for those of you who are using the uncatalogued feature to add, say, possibly in-house developed custom applications to the discovered section, but not adding them to the Dell case catalog, you can use that column to differentiate between titles that you added to the catalog as opposed to those which came from the Dell application catalog. So it makes tracking those custom applications a bit easier.
Yeah, and there's not going to be many in that kind of section, right? But like John said, if you make your own application, right, and you still want to track it, right, then you'll need to get that over into discovered. Okay. Now, if we want to work and add a license, right, we're going to look in the Discovered section like we just mentioned, right? And one thing that I want to make known is that if you're looking through the software catalog, and it might be hard to see in my screenshot here, right? But if you're looking at Microsoft Office, you can see I have a couple different ones here, as well as Office 2011 for Mac. Now, you can see that they're slightly bold compared to the other ones. What that means is that that is a suite of applications, not just one, here's one application. That means that this is a whole suite, right? And that's important for licensing, right? In that, you could, in theory, buy just Microsoft Word, and I have a Microsoft Word license. But then I also might have Microsoft Office licenses, which does include Word. Right? So now the software catalog can tell the difference between the two and wrap them up properly, right? So that everything in a suite goes over here, everything that's just alone goes over there, right? And the licensing can be kept separate for those particular objects. All right. So the first thing that you want to do, right, is find the software and go ahead and take a look at that piece of software. And I've got a little picture here, right, of what the detail, right, this is for Microsoft Office 2013 Professional Plus, right. You can see down below we've got a good amount of information pre-filled in, right. We've got publishers and platform, the type of software, right, the category, new features in the K1006.4 include the general availability, end of life, and MSRP. Now, this particular one doesn't seem to have an MSRP, but several others, I believe, when I was looking around 2010, have MSRP. And obviously, this will be updated over time.
I was going to say, I grabbed that screenshot from a development version of 6.4 when I was trying to create, I believe, our What's New guide. And at that point, it wasn't being pushed to the appliance, but it's there now.
This was just yesterday, John.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see,
I have that same version, so that's why I was.
Yeah. So just a heads up, though, that what we mentioned earlier about the Dell application catalog, we're constantly updating and pushing this out to you. So these fields will all be populated at a certain point, right? But even so, you can see the general availability, when did this software come out, and end of life, which to me, that's more important than MSRP, right? When is this going to be end of life, right? Because I'd like to know so that I can make future plans, right? And I've got a few years left to keep 2013 around, right? But for support purposes, we might have to keep an eye on, and you can do reporting based on what software you might have and compare that to the end of life, right? Give me software that's going to be end of life in the next 2 years, right? So that I can properly plan replacements and training and all the things that our organization needs, right, around that. Now, this page here, and we'll come back to this, you can see at the top, right, we've got two little check boxes there. We've got not allowed and metered, right? This is for our application control and metering. And then to the right, you can see right now, right, it's saying that I've got 3 machines that have this suite installed on it. Right now, I haven't added any licenses just yet, but we'll take a quick look at that in a moment. Right? But if I clicked on that 3, it would take me to a list of the 3 machines that have this suite installed on it. Okay? Now, if I wanted to add a license, right, we're going to be on that same exact detail page on Microsoft Office. Right, I scroll down to the bottom, right, and I'm going to click on. There's just a button that says Add New License. Now, out of the box, there's not going to be a license. Now, I added one, and you can kind of see that one there, right? But you can add as many as you need. So if you actually have 3 different agreements with Microsoft concerning Microsoft Office licensing, right, then you can go ahead and add all 3 here, right, and that will allow you to kind of aggregate the total number of licenses there to bring that all in. Now, there's a few pieces of information when you click New License, right, things that you need to add to it automatically, right? There's no choice in the matter, right? There's the name, obviously, of the license, and that's just a kind of a visual name. right? Then you want to make sure you put in your license count. The license mode, right? Is this a unit license, an enterprise license? Is this a CAL license? Is this a subscription license? And while this is mostly informational for you, right, it's important for you to be able to come and see this and know that, right? And then maintenance, this is mostly for the compliance engine, which is new in 6.4, right? So does this include maintenance, yes or no? Now, there are other fields on the license asset type, right, that you can fill in, and there's plenty that come in just, by default, right? Unit cost, right? There's a lot of different fields that we have built in that you can fill out to get a more complete picture of licensing. But you can also, right, if you go back, and we just kind of went over assets, right, in 6.4, right, a couple weeks ago, we had two KKEs on assets, right? You can go into the license asset type and actually add additional fields. So one of the things that I've worked with customers by adding to the license asset type, right, is adding an attachment field, right? And then we go ahead and we download the PDF file that Microsoft sends us, and then we upload that directly into the asset so that I don't have to go filtering through my email looking for that PDF every time I want to get information about it, right? It's being kept inside the K1000. Now, obviously, be careful about the size of the attachments that you're adding, because now we're adding more to the K1 to have to back up and so on, right? But we can add additional fields should we want to, right? We can even do cross-linked assets, so we can, have, what department is this for? What vendor do we buy this from, right? What purchase order did I get this from, right? So there's a lot of different things we can add. One of the other things that we can do, and this comes by default on a license, is we can specify these are the machines that are approved to run this piece of software, right? And what that allows us to do, right, is say, all right, I have these 50 licenses, and these 50 machines are allowed to run it. And what I can do is I can have reporting that says, all right, of these 50 licenses, 3 of them are on machines that are not approved to run the software. Now, just be wary that we are not going to prevent that application from running on those 3 machines. We're just going to report that to you, right? We are not a licensed server. We're just tracking the information. All right, so add all your licenses in, find the application you want, add the licenses that you have, right? Modify the asset as necessary to include any other additional information, and the whole goal here should be never have to go into my email, never have to go onto my file share to get any information about my licensing that I've purchased anywhere else, right? It's all in the K1, right? Even if you're really not worried about auditing purposes, just informational purposes, it's easier. You're always in the K1 anyway. Let's just keep all that information there, okay? All right. Anything to add there, John?
No, I think you got that covered pretty well there.
Okay. All right. So what is new in 6.4, right? We kind of covered this a little bit in the what's new. And John, I don't mind. I don't know if you want to kind of just kind of talk about these items here if you'd like.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Sure.
Okay, so as you can see, there are several new highlights in 6.4 related to a software license. As Andrew mentioned, we have a new license compliance page, and depending on the license information that you provide and how the license is configured as opposed to the versions you have running out there on your endpoints, you can now see on that new license compliance page whether or not the license applies to the current version installed on your systems or whether you have upgrade or downgrade rates. So say, for example, if for a group in your company, although you have licenses for Office 2013, you're running them on Office 2010 for some compatibility reason, say with a plugin or something like that, and you can now track that information on the license compliance page. That page is calculated every night. All of the license information on that page is calculated every night at 1 a.m. To help perform or help the performance of the query that actually goes through and pulls all of that together. It's a bit intense, and in previous versions we had tried to run that on the fly, but to better the performance of the K1, we now calculate it nightly. Though there is a link on that page called Update Now, which you can click on to force a recalculation immediately. It still takes a couple minutes to go through because, again, it is an intense query, but you do have that ability. Then, as we saw in the screenshot that Andrew provided for a software catalog detail page, we now have the manufacturer's suggested retail price, which most that I've checked do have the information there, so you can use it for your reporting and planning. The general availability, when it was released, the end of life, and so now you can include that information in your reporting. As Andrew also mentioned, new to the license assets in 6.4 is the ability to track maintenance. In previous versions, you could specify whether or not maintenance was included with a yes or no, but in 6.4 we've added a calendar picker. So if you do specify that maintenance ends at a certain point, you can actually specify the day, report on it, and track that information. We've also added 2 new license types for the license assets. As you can see there, enterprise and client access license. And if you pop over to the report wizard, you'll see there's 2 new software compliance topics as well as a subtopic which will provide more details and give you more fields with more details there. And as I mentioned earlier, on the software catalog page, we've added catalog as a new column so that you can track the source of whether software came from the Dell application catalog or whether you've locally titled it and added it to the catalog software. And all of the columns on the software catalog page are now sortable. So you can quickly arrange the columns by install count, for example, to keep track of that more easily. So excellent. That would be it.
Thank you. And what I like about this is that you know, we've made an already great feature even better, right? I actually feel this is a really great feature in the appliance, and one of the things that's just easy to get into and just get going, right? There's really not a lot of startup here, right? So we're continuing to improve upon it, lots of new little features here and there. And let me just give you a little quick picture at the license compliance view here. Right, and you can see here, and I included the breakdown of the inventory module in the bottom right there, so you can see where to find this in your K1000. If you don't see it, right, either you're not on 6.4, or you want to go ahead and check your role, make sure that you have access to that page in your role, right? But you'll see here is you have a list of all of your software here in a kind of in a similar way as the catalog. Right, but we're going to be rolling up even more. Right, here's all of your Office licenses, and you can see we have it's been, you know, was it an accordion, right? Or we've expanded it out, right? And you can see here's the total number of installed licenses that we have for Office, but then a breakdown underneath that. Right. On this page also, we're showing some basic metering information, right? And we'll get to how you get that information in just a moment, right? But we're kind of combining, right, all of our license compliance, metering information all into one view, very quick, very easy, in order to, you know, see and get a bigger picture of what's going on in our environment.
And just a couple more things on that page. That coverage column, second from the end on the right, that's where it will indicate whether a license is the original or whether you have upgrade or downgrade rights. Also, another point, main purpose of this page is to basically provide you a ready-to-use pretty much always up-to-date report for your license, basically an overview, like a manager overview level of your license compliance. From the Choose Action menu on this page, you can export this directly to CSV, or you can create a report and using the report wizard. So it'll automatically grab this information and throw it into a report for you, which you can then go back and tweak, add fields, remove fields as you need to make the report, completely applicable to your environment and your needs.
Excellent. All right. So we've done some assets and for licensing and so on, and I just want to mention I do see we have some questions. I will answer all of those questions at the end of the presentation. So just hold on, and we'll get there. All right. But so the first part is software licensing, and we really haven't done anything other than kind of pull information in about our machines and compare that to some numbers, right? So now let's kind of, get out there, right? Maybe we've put out some licensing information, and we're getting now, that we have 57 machines that have a piece of software, whereas we only have 50 licenses, right? And this isn't the case where, hey, let's just go uninstall it from 7 machines, right? Maybe 57 people absolutely do need it, right? Or maybe we need to we need to buy 7 more licenses, right? But if it's the earlier case where, yeah, I got to go and install 7, which 7 get it, right? Did we have an original list of people who are supposed to have it? Maybe there's new people. Maybe people have left the company, right? We need to kind of figure this out. And one of the things that will help with that, right, is metering, right, and application control, right? So this is a process, right, that does require an agent, right, and there's a couple steps, not very hard, to kind of get started with metering and application control, right? And again, this feature comes right in your K1000. Right, now, in order to get metering and or application control to function, devices must be in a label that have those features enabled, okay? Now, we have the appliance. The appliance has 2 labels that come with it. They are manual labels, and then you can use them if you would like, although best practice would be to not use these particular labels. We like to kind of skirt people away from manual labels in general, but we have them there. If you want to use them, that's okay. And you can see we have a label called metered devices, and then another label called application control devices. Right? And again, these are manual labels, so if you go into your inventory and you can checkbox a whole bunch of machines, go to Choose Action drop-down, go to Apply Labels, and then you can add labels to machines that way. Okay? Now, if you want to use your own labels, right, you've created smart labels, and I have a smart label for machines that have the exact application that I am looking, at metering. You can go ahead and go into the home module, go into label management, go into labels, go select that device label, and then if you scroll down a bit, you'll see, and I've got 2 little pictures down below here, you'll see a section that says restrict label usage to. The device inventory checkbox should already be selected because it is a device label, right? And then you'll want to click one or both of the checkboxes down below, depending on what you want to do with that label. You can see one for metering, one for application control. Right? So a device must be in a label that has this enabled already. We come with 2 built into the appliance, but you can create others yourself. Right? If the device is not in a label that has this on, it's not going to work. And what we recommend that you do is get your devices into these labels first, right? Before we go any further into turning on metering or application control or anything like that, right? Let's get machines into a label that have that, already enabled. Another thing that I want to stress here is that when we go and we start turning on metering and application control for certain applications, right? All machines that are in a metering label will have all of the software that has metered enabled will be metered, Right? You can't say these 5 machines get this metered, those 10 machines get this metered, and then those 30 machines get this metered. Right? All things that have metering enabled in a label that has metering enabled will be metered. Right? This is not very intensive on the machine or the network at all, so it's not something that I would worry about, if you have too much out there. It's just something to note, okay? Now, we've gotten our machine into a label that has metering enabled now, and now we want to go ahead and we want to find, right, the application in our software catalog. Right. So again, right, first checkbox, right, first bullet here, right, make sure the device is in the label that we want to work with, right, that has metering enabled. Right, and then the second one here, right, we want to go find the application, right, so you can see I went to Office 2013 Professional Plus, and I checkboxed the metered checkbox, okay? Now, what happens is, right, your device will get, and I don't think I have a view here to show you, right? But in your device inventory, you'll have a little metering icon, right, next to the device, right? And until the metering data is coming back from that machine, you'll have a gray metering icon, right? Once we now have some metering information about that machine, right, we will have a blue metering icon. So don't be concerned about that gray icon. Just give it a few minutes. Right? And the way that metering works is that basically we tell the client machines, right, everything in that label, you now go ahead and meter Office 2013, right? How often the application is launched and for how long, right? What was the open time and close time? That even includes if you open it up multiple times, right? So sometimes I'll have, PowerPoint open 30 times, right? What happens is we are not going to be constantly sending that data up to the K1000, right? We are going to be holding on to that information locally client side, right? And then every so often, we're going to be uploading that data up to the K1000, right? Now, that interval can be found if you go into your settings module, if you go to provisioning and go to communication settings, right? You'll see a metering interval there. Right now, it's by default usually set to 4 hours. So every 4 hours, the clients will be uploading the information of what has happened in the past 4 hours. Right? So enabling metering is not an immediate, let me get information type of thing. Right? It's an over time type of thing, right? Because I want to gather how often are people using this application. And you can see in the screenshot I have here in the bottom right, I just kind of started to meter in my environment. I don't have a lot of information. I don't have that many clients, right? But you can start seeing, right, how many are installed, right? And then how many times in the last 90 days were these particular applications run, right? And then I can go click on them and see which machines and so on. And now I can start pulling all that information into my environment and being able to see who has used something in the last 90 days, combining that with my software license compliance, right? Now I can start to have, and this is what I always tell my customers, these are conversation starters. Right? So now I can have conversations with my users and say, well, I've noticed that you haven't used this software in the last 90 days. Right? We are doing some license compliance work, making sure that everything is being done correctly. Right? I would like to know maybe why you haven't used it in the last 90 days, or is there going to be a need? Right? Maybe only one time during the year you use that software, but they really do need to have it. Right? Or maybe it's just something they like to have. They don't really need to use it, right? Conversation starter, right? But we have all this information now in the K1000 between the licenses and now the metering to really have an informed conversation, right? And that's the key there, all right? So metering, again, very simple, couple check boxes, right? Turn it on for some devices. Start pulling that information in every 4 hours. Give it a couple days, give it a couple weeks, give it a couple months to really run to learn habits, right? Because you might find that 1 week they use it a whole lot, whereas the rest of the year they don't. All right, and you can see we keep a kind of a tally there of what's going on. All right, so that's metering. right? Again, to me, very powerful tool. Now, the next one here, this is one of my favorites here, right? Is application control, right? When the software catalog first debuted, we had this little checkbox that said not allowed. Well, it didn't actually do anything at that point, right? This is 5.5. So, but in the next release, we turned on this feature, not allowed. I don't want an application to run. Right now, in the instance I've got here, right, I'm using Firefox, right, because maybe I don't want people using alternate browsers, right? Maybe they have to use IE or else things don't work properly. So I'm just going to prevent people from using alternate browsers so that I don't get support calls saying, hey, this thing didn't work. Well, you're using an unsupported browser. So what I can do is I can, again, go back into my software catalog, right? Again, this is after I have turned on the label and applied it to my devices, right? So I want to blacklist certain applications for all my student machines, right? Or all my users' machines, whatever the group is, right? Let's get them into a label. Then I go into my software catalog, right? And I will check the not allowed checkbox, okay? Now, it's not I check the box and then literally 5 seconds later that application is prevented from being run, right? Give it, I believe it's a 15-minute interval, right, where all of the not allows are going to be sent down to the devices that have that functionality enabled, right? And then when they launch Firefox.exe, and you can see down below, they're going to get a little pop-up that says, yep, terminated, blacklisted application. What application was it? And it's not going to allow it to run, right? So we don't want our students playing World of Warcraft in school, right? We can put it in the not allowed list and prevent those applications from running. Okay? Go ahead, John.
A good note for machines that you have working remotely that aren't always connected to the network and or the K1000. If they are enabled for blacklisting and you have applications blacklisted and that information gets sent down to those machines, they'll be working from a local blacklist file. So still works even if they're off the network. Say, sales laptop running around, from place to place, but it will only be updated as of the last inventory with the K1000.
Yep. Absolutely. And again, just like with metering, right, all applications that are on the black list will apply to all machines that are in the application control label. So I can't say those 30 machines will have this application blacklisted, these 30 machines will have that application blacklisted, right? It's kind of an all or none type of thing, right? So be certain about which ones you would like to blacklist and which ones you don't. All right, but you can kind of see how that all works in here together. I know this is highly used in school environments. Very nice for those places.
No doubt. And one thing, too, if you do find that more granular blacklisting or metering would be useful for your environment, user voice.
Yep, absolutely. Case.uservoice.com, right? We're constantly adding and changing the products. If you think that would be really useful, then absolutely head out there, and I'm sure it's already a request up there. Go ahead and put your vote in there. All right. Okay. All right. So that is our discussion for the day. I have a couple questions in chat. I'm going to handle those in just a moment. But what we're going to do is after I deal with those questions, we're going to go ahead and open up the mics, and we'll let you ask any questions that you might have. Please be aware of any background noise that you might have, and if you can, please mute your own mic. Otherwise, I will have to mute you, and then if you have a question, I will have to unmute you, right? You can also use the chat window. Make sure to send to host, presenter, and panelists, or all panelists. That way, both myself and John will be able to see the questions and answer them properly. You can also use the Q&A panel if you feel more comfortable with that. So before we do all of that, I wanted to just handle these questions here, which says, this is from Monica, right? If multiple purchases of Office, right, as for an example, occur and multiple software licenses are created in Case, will Case aggregate totals if the models are the same for each license record, or is that a manual process? So if I go into, and we'll just stick with Office, right? If I go into Microsoft Office 2013 Professional Plus, right, and I add a license for 50, and then I add a license for 100, and then I add a license for 75, right? The details of each of those licenses can actually be slightly different from each other, right? But the fact that I'm adding them onto one software catalog record, right, will aggregate them all together. So I have 50, 100, and 75. That means I will have 225 total licenses for Microsoft Office, right? And it will aggregate those together automatically, right? You don't have to do anything special there. Okay. Let's see here. We got a question from Casey. For application control, will forcing an inventory send the blacklist at that time, or do you still have to wait? It is my understanding that you still have to wait. I believe it's a 15-minute interval, right, before all of those new blacklist items will actually start going into effect. John might have a...
That's correct. That's correct. Yep. And the reason for the 15-minute interval, and I got this straight from the engineer who designed it, because I was trying to understand exactly how application control functioned, you know, on the internal side of things. The reason being is they wanted to give K1 admins enough time to blacklist potentially multiple titles, and instead of sending it immediately or for every single time an application is blacklisted, they give you a 15-minute window, and in most cases that's going to allow you to finish blacklisting the applications that you need to, and then all of those get sent in one chunk to your devices.
I could also see a case where if it was immediate, right, I accidentally clicked the wrong box.
Right.
Right. It gives me no time really to get back to it before somebody calls me up. Right. So
I just blacklisted Office by accident. I meant to meter it, and now it's blacklisted. And that's something also to be aware of, is that the application control piggybacks on the metering interval. So you don't have to have metering enabled for an application in order for the application control to work. But just be aware, as Andrew mentioned earlier, in the settings, provisioning, communication settings section, the metering interval you specify there will also apply to blacklisting, as far as how often the K1000 checks to see if the local blacklisting file is current.
Okay, excellent. We've got some more questions here, and this one is from Lisa. How does CASE count the CALs that are used like Windows CALs? So again, our software licensing is not there's no actual enforcement, right? We are not going to be saying, hey, you've got so many CALs, let's make sure we use them, right? This is something that you would specify. I'm going to log into my software catalog. I'm going to find the item. If it so happens to be a type of license in which I've purchased it as a CAL, I can just specify that it was a CAL. Right? Again, we're not really doing anything with that information. This is for your purposes, as well as some of the license compliance engine to be able to see, right, is there something here for upgrade, downgrade, and so on. So we're not really doing any counting purposes, right? Yeah. So we're not looking at a server and saying, oh, there's too many accesses to terminal app or something like that. We're not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. To rephrase that a bit, the K1000 doesn't take action.
That's good words.
On license counts. So what we're doing is giving you the tools to put all of your licensing information in, allowing you to find out what's already out there as far as installations, and then report on it, so that from that point on, it's a lot easier to manage everything. But at this point, with the current version, I'll say that much. Hopefully you can read between the lines here a little bit. But with the current version, we're not taking action on software licenses.
Yep. Excellent. Okay. And the last question, I might have to have that rephrased, Jerry. If I add device approved for, it wants the BIOS serial number. Can't seem to figure out how to get the device name. And let me just go ahead and share out my...
I think she's talking about the asset license detail screen.
Yeah.
Or license asset details.
Yeah, screen. I'm just going to go to that page so I can kind of show that. John, just let me know once you see my
it's
K1000. Okay, so let's just go to Office here. and that's the wrong button there. Let's just go to Office here, just because it's the one that we've been working with so often. All right, I'm going to find 2013 Professional.
Do me a favor, Andrew.
Sure.
Just back up real quick and go to 2010, just to show them the MSRP info is populated.
Yes, there you go. MSRP is right there. All right, so there we go. Apparently I have that in my environment still somewhere. Yeah, so that, of course it's the one I chose that doesn't have it. But again, this is a living, breathing catalog, right? It's going to get in there soon, right? Brand new feature and all that. All right, so I'm just going to click on Add New License down here, right? And when I come down here to, and I've got a whole bunch of extra stuff added to my page here, so that yours may not look exactly the same, right? I have this approved for device section, right? And I can say, and again, this is for reporting purposes, right? Going back to what John was just saying, no actions are going to be taken, right? But if I say that Office is only allowed on, these particular machines, right? Then I can run a report. There is one already built in the K1 to tell me, based on that list of machines, is there anybody else that has it, and show me that list. Right, but this should be showing you everything in your inventory, Sherry. So I don't know where you have something that says BIOS serial number.
I'm wondering if it might have been a custom field. If you go into the asset types and into the license asset type, you can add whatever fields you want to there.
Yep.
And if you do a device field, you could potentially get BIOS numbers in there, but as Andrew said, the approved for device field is populated with the same device names that you see on the devices page. And if it is not, that may warrant a call to support to see if something is amiss with your database, with the K1000's database.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I would check, and like John was saying, right, we can come over to asset types. Right, I'm just going to click discard changes here, right, and I can click on license, right, and again, I've done some additional things on this page here, so yours may not look exactly the same, right, but the, where is it here, right, approved for device section should be there. You might have added a custom item.
Or another possibility, I'm looking at the type associated with that field. Approved for device, if you look over, it's automatically set to asset device by default.
Yeah.
So that may have been changed to something else.
Well, it's not configurable.
Okay.
Right. So but still something to look into. If it doesn't say asset device, then definitely contact support, because that should absolutely say so.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So mostly, all the things extra are custom fields. Everything is stuck on that page, right? You can't affect it. You don't have to fill it in, but it's going to be there, right? All right, so let's see here. That catches me up in the chat window. So I've got another question here. Hi, and this is from Urs. I apologize if I pronounce people's names wrong. We need to know how many licenses are used out in our worldwide sites. How do I have to set that up? So there's nothing specific in the K1, right, that's going to say this is a license that's being used in headquarters, as opposed to a license that's being used at a remote building. That is something, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, that we could probably set up as a report.
Oh, yeah.
If location is blah, then go ahead and count the license. But
you'd want to have labels. You'd want, at the very least, you would want to have either labels created that specify what the locations are for different machines. So you might have a label for your corporate machines. You might have different labels for machines at your different branch sites. Another possibility would be to track that information through assets. So, but again, that would require you going into the location asset type and device asset types and cross-linking fields, and that would be a little more involved to set up, but entirely possible. Regardless of the way you do it, though, ultimately to be able to track that information easily, you'd want to create a report based on your licenses, your devices, and then your locations at a minimum.
And then on the reports, you could filter. So if you say, well, just give me the licenses and for devices that are at this particular site, right? And then kind of filter based on those types of things. So it's not something we can really readily show right here. It'd be a few minutes to set up. You know, if you have questions about that, if you really need someone to help you out, right? There's things that either training or remote professional services that we could help you set up. Otherwise, I might recommend watching the assets KKEs, right? And then also, you know, setting up your software compliance here, and then kind of going into the report wizard and seeing what kind of reports that you can kind of come up with.
As well as labels. I believe we have some labels KKE somewhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. Grouping your devices and labels and so on. Yeah, we absolutely have KKEs on that. All right, so why don't we go ahead? I'm going to open up the mics here. I think I've answered all the questions in chat, and if I missed one, I would apologize. So let me go ahead and unmute everybody. Once again, remind you about your background noise. If you have any, please mute your line. Otherwise, I will come through with the mute hammer and mute you. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and speak up. If you have anything that you'd like to see really quick, by all means. Okay, and again, if I muted you and you are unable to unmute yourself, that means just chat, and I'll unmute you. Does anyone have any questions to what we went over here today? And you can see here, I'm just showing you my device inventory here. You can see I've got that little, speedometer icon there, right? And that's showing me that that machine is in a label that is being metered. It would be gray if there's no information being uploaded to the K1 yet. Once it is, once we're starting to get information, then we'll be blue. Once we have licensing information being tracked in the K1, and again, I don't have too many licenses plugged into my K1 here, but you can see we have a widget for license compliance, right, that will show you I have 4 machines out of 50 using licenses, so it is a green bar, and it's showing me a percentage. If you are at like 51 out of 50, right, it would be a red bar, right? Question of how to show me to move software from not discovered to discovered. Absolutely. Right, very simple, right? So we're going to come into Software Catalog, and I'm going to click on the Uncatalogued tab here, right? And then what you have to do is you have to find what it is you're looking for. Now you can see I've got a lot of these are kind of like all of the executables. Yeah,
all of them.
Yeah, all these are all the ancillary executables that you find for a lot of applications here. So what you'll want to do is find whatever it is that you are looking for. So let's just say that accounts control is the application name. And in some cases, right, maybe it's an in-house developer and they haven't detailed the executable properly. So the name here on the left may not be absolutely perfect to what you want. So sometimes you might have to look for the executable name, right? However you find it, let's go ahead and let's click into that particular item, right? And what we can do is you can see, right, here's that Add to Catalog button, right? And that opens us up some new information, right? We can change the software title, right? Maybe it's a completely different application name. I'm going to put the, proper name here, right? What category does this belong into? And this is mostly for, our record-keeping purposes, right? Maybe this is a statistical analysis tool, right? And then down below that, you'll see 2 options, right? Add software title to this K1 and then share with us. And then you'll want to put in your contact information, name, company, and email address. If we have any questions, we might email you about it. Or I just want to add this to my K1, right? If this is an application that you guys built, and you are literally going to be the only ones to ever have it, you could probably just get by adding it to your own K1. If this is something that, this really doesn't belong in here, maybe it should belong in the catalog, right? Then go ahead and make sure you put in your contact details. And then once you click Save, right, it brings it right over to the software catalog. Right, I can move it out of the local software catalog, right? Maybe I did the wrong one. And then we now have all of the same options that we did before. Okay. So quick and easy, right? And again, you shouldn't have to be doing it to too many applications, right? Obviously, you're not going to get a lot of the little details, right? But we're going to get specific information, right?
When they add it to the software catalog, hopefully they'll go ahead and populate that information as well. There's a whole team associated with it. So.
Yep. There's a whole bunch of people sitting in a basement somewhere waiting for this information. Excellent, right? But yeah, and it basically happens. Everyone's got like 2 applications that are probably rare enough to kind of pop into the uncatalogued section. And yes, I'd like to meter this thing, right? Because I still have to control it, right? All right. Any other questions about software compliance, software catalog, licensing, blacklisting? Right, this would be a fun one. Adobe Reader, right? Just blacklist it.
And one thing to note too on the software catalog detail page, there's no save or OK button. Once you hit that check mark,
yep,
it's enabled or disabled.
Right here, one nice thing we mentioned this already, right? About software catalog, right? Is that it's showing me all the different versions that are out there and how many people have that installed, right? So I can see, right, that I've got 4 different versions of Adobe Reader 11 inventoried in my K1. Right. So,
and on that note, if you want to see information about the individual versions, like the point releases, you can find that in the software inventory. They're still discreetly listed there.
Yep.
Particularly useful for managed installations as one example.
Yep. And now this is again information, right? And that's one of the things I try to teach as much as I can with the K1 is that you now have the information to act, right? So I might need to have managed installs, right, that are going to now go in and make sure I only have one version of Adobe Reader 11. Right, but you may not have known this information before. Now you've got a K1. Now I can see this information. Okay. Any questions? Anything at all? Otherwise, we're gonna call it.
Yeah, I've got one question before we go.
Go ahead.
For restricting software. I noticed on that screenshot it said Firefox.exe was a blacklisted program.
Yep.
If we have people who are smart enough to be dangerous, if they modify that to be Firefox1.exe, is it still going to be blocked, or is it going to get through?
No, it's not. So that's something, that's a good thing to be aware of. If you have people who are smart enough to know how programs work, yes, they could very well rename the exe, and then you're basically in the same spot. So.
Okay.
However,
we are aware of that.
It might be interesting. It's something the developers are aware of. So it's something we may see. We'll probably see addressed in a future release. But for the time being, might be one suggestion I might make there be if you actually report on the counts of the applications that are out there and you see that someone has that installed or that your counts are varying, it might be something you look into, especially if a machine is reporting it and then all of a sudden after you blacklist it, it's no longer being reported. There may be something going on. Food for thought.
And one of the other things that I always pointed out is, and because, I worked in a school district, right? There were a handful of kids who were smart enough to get around. I didn't have the K1 doing this. I had a different application doing this. They were smart enough to know how to change the executable names and so on, right? But I still get to see what processes are running, right? So, even though I might have changed the executable, in most cases the process under the hood doesn't actually change. Right, I'm just kind of changing the executable, running it. So I can still see what processes are running on what machines, right, at the time of inventory. So you can still, in most cases, track down who's being silly, right? And again, right, blacklisting is nice, but if people are going to get around my blacklisting, right, now I'm going to involve, management and human resources because they're doing things they're not supposed to.
Yep.
Right? The K1's not going to prevent, people from being people, right? We can get there most of the way and kind of block things and certain things and so on, but at a certain point, if they're being like that, right, we can still gather that information and deal with it in non-technology ways, right?
If you do need to deal with it in technology ways, there is a security policy, I think, under scripting that you can just take out their network access.
Oh yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, just black hole them. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there's always a way, right? There's always avenues, but that is a concern, and I know that the developers are aware of that, right? And I hope that that is addressed in a future release, but nothing to mention at this point.
Yeah. User voice.
Yep. User voice. Yes, absolutely. Okay. But good thinking there. There's always going to be a few of those people, and then there's no way to, to truly stop them from being.
Yeah, it's a management item.
Yep.
Yeah. As long as you have, with the K1, you can at least track it, you can report on it, and you can prove that it's going on. Whereas before, good luck with that.
Yep. Yep. Same way I found Minecraft servers on my environment, right? The kids kept changing the executable name to be something else, right? But the processes were still the same, so I was able to track them down and what machines they were on, and then the timestamps of when they were being tracked, and then I know what kids are in what seat at what point of the day, cross-linked them all, figured out exactly who it was, right? So, and then dealt with it in non-technology ways. So.
Andrew, John, this is Eugene. I have a couple of questions for you.
Hi, Eugene.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
First one, we have SQL 2012 installations, just a free express version on a few stations, and somehow it happens to register the same generic way in the software catalog as the licensed paid 2012 standard runtime version. And I was wondering if there is a way to separate them so I could add a license to a server which requires us to, for us to track it, and leave the stations where the express version is installed alone. I'm not sure if there's a way to rename or somehow separate these licenses or how Case sees them. It just sees it as a generic 2012
it sounds
product.
So it's aggregating all of them, your free ones, including your licensed ones, correct?
Yeah, it shows that SQL 2012 server doesn't show its standard. It just shows it as a generic SQL 2012.
Okay.
It's installed on one server and 5 machines.
Okay, my first thought there, just for tracking purposes, is dummy license for the express versions. So you could, that way your counts are still accurate.
Yep.
You could have like Andrew showed, you can have multiple license assets associated with a single software catalog item.
Got it.
So, you could have your valid license, and for the versions that you actually paid for, and then for the free versions that are unfortunately being rolled up along with them, you could create a dummy license with the count for however many devices running that, and specify that information in there. Still include the counts and everything, but as far as the cost, you can put in 0 and the notes section for that license asset, specify, hey, this is basically a placeholder, so our counts are still accurate. On the back end, that's something that would need to be addressed by the Dell application catalog team. Might be worth, if you haven't done so already, generating a support ticket to make them aware of that. Although I know they are with a couple other titles. So again,
and it also comes down to if it can be done.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if the application is being written and installed in such a way that it literally is the same application, right? But there's some other key somewhere that we're not aware of that's making that change under the hood.
I know Autodesk
to make the addition changes. Yeah, it's.
I know with some like if I'm not mistaken, like Autodesk does that with a lot of theirs. I spoke with an engineer last week at conference about that very same issue. And the fact is, that we're tracking the executables, and they just happen to morph depending on the license key you apply to them. But from an executable point of view and a title point of view, it all looks the same.
Yeah.
So dummy licenses is how I might suggest handling your specific situation. Hopefully that helps.
Now, you can also wrap in, and this really has nothing to do with licensing specifically, but if there is a registry key, right, that specifies the difference between express and non-express, you can create like a custom inventory, record to see that, software as, a full version or not. So at least in your software inventory, and from a machine or a device level, we'd be able to see which version it has.
And actually, that's a very good point, Andrew. With custom inventory rules, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure in 6.4 you can still create license assets that are tied to a software license record as opposed to a software catalog record. So for those, that specific title, you might look at doing that approach. And that would be something you would configure on the license asset page once you had the differentiation made with your custom inventory rules.
Okay.
Again, a little complicated, so it's not a 1, 2, 3 done kind of setup. So that's something that Andrew mentioned before.
Yeah, I think it's still showing catalog software here. I didn't know if
maybe it was the previous version. I'm taking a look at a new one right now. Okay, yeah, it looks like there's still an applies to software. And let me pop over to a software item. Just out of curiosity here.
Maybe on old ones. I don't see it on. This is a new license that was created yesterday, so I don't see a.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
That must have been a previous version. 6.4 doesn't look like that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
At least not from there. Let me see here.
Maybe if you create a license asset by scratch.
That's what I just tried.
Through the software catalog.
That's what I just tried. And actually, if you pop into the, you see applies to software, but I don't see anywhere to actually populate it. And if you go into a software inventory record, you'll see that in the middle of the page that there's a licenses field still present, but I don't see a way to actually add.
Yeah, I think that's just grandfathered in at this point. I think,
Yeah. So looks like they dropped that for 6.4. So hopefully they have something planned for the future.
Yep.
Possibly just dropping that feature completely, but
yeah.
But again, they are aware of the situation. So our engineers they're pretty bright guys. So I would imagine they'll figure a way to allow you to address that with a future release.
Another quick question for you, and you may have mentioned this, I may have overheard. Let's take the Hyper-V Enterprise 08 license, which allows you to get up to 4 virtual machines installed, or 2012 Enterprise for that matter too. Is there what's the best way to track those licenses? Because it not only allows you to install, let's say, 08 Enterprise up to 4 virtual machines and a host and be fully in compliance, but also downgrade and do all kind of actions with it, which we actually take advantage of. We still have a couple of 03s, a couple of 08s, which are all rolling up to the 08 Enterprise license. Is there an easy approach to tracking these virtual server licenses under one Enterprise 08 instance, or do you have any suggestions how to account for all of those installations, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good one. So you'd want to go and search for Windows here, because I know we do see
We see App-V installations, but
right.
That's the first thing that popped in my mind, but you're speaking specifically about Hyper-V.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, we just see the operating system, right? We don't really know that it's virtual or not, right? You know, outside of it being a inventoried item inside the K1 as an operating system, right? But there's nothing that's, you know, saying that here.
Well, if we get away from the Hyper-V concept in general, let's say we have 5 servers that were discovered by Case. Server 1 is the actual host, and the 4 VMs are hosted on that virtual host. There are 5 server licenses. We have to add a license for each. But truly, they are all licensed under an 08 server enterprise 08 server, which allows me to install the host server OS and up to 4 Windows server VMs. I'm just trying to keep track of those. We still have about 3 or 4 of those hosts that would have this type of licensing, and I could really find a good way to
I hate to sound like a broken record, but just thinking about my advice on the last question, I'm again thinking dummy license for the ones that are covered under the main license, right, just so your counts true up.
Right. So I came into Windows Server 2012. Again, I don't have a lot of servers here, right? But there's nothing, right? So this is all Windows servers, right? But there's nothing that's saying on this one server allow up to 4 clients, right? But I can still put in, here's my one server and it allows up to 4 clients. That's a count of 5, right? And I can kind of aggregate, but it's this one OS. So it's, you know, that's allowing that. But when I come to license compliance, right, I can come down to Windows Server, right? I have this kind of master, and it hasn't updated yet, so I need to update it. And this actually answers Mark's question of when I come here, it still shows 5 in the detail page. The license compliant page only runs once a day unless you force it to update now. So you might need to force an update now, right? And that's going to take a few minutes, right? I'll get the master amount of. That's kind of interesting how that shows there. The master amount of clients there, but there's really nothing that's going to track it the way that you're asking to track it.
Okay.
Personally, I mean, there could be, you could use assets to do, oh, here's Windows Server, right? So under Windows, I'll have all my right numbers, but it's not really exactly how you're asking for it. You know, you could sort of track that through assets, but it wouldn't be a live count.
Yep.
In a way.
Well, just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, and hey, go to user voice, and you know we do now have a monitoring feature of the K1, right? And you know maybe a request would be to kind of combine monitoring and software catalog, right? And then licensing, so that I can do exactly what you're asking for.
Yeah, because you know all the forward licenses work so well, but you know Microsoft is auditing us right now, and we still have to do quite a few almost on paper just to figure out that our counts are correct.
Right. Right. Well, if they made it easier, it'd be a lot easier also. But yes.
Well, they are confused. Their system broke for 3 weeks. They couldn't audit us properly. So.
Hey, just figure that as 3 extra weeks to get your reporting underway, right?
Yeah, that's
so. Yeah, so that'd be a great request, right? But you know, outside of kind of tracking that manually with an asset, right? So you can have an asset type called like, you know, virtual host, and then you can have items called virtual clients, and you can kind of track them all in here and tie them together.
Well, one thing there too, you wouldn't have to do that part of it.
Right.
That is one way you could do it. Another way you could do it would be in devices.
Right.
If you check I'm pretty sure it's either platform or model, you can see which devices are virtual and which ones are physical.
Oh, sure. So, right, but which one is on which server is what I'm trying to get at, right? You'd kind of have to know which was that. You can do that through devices. You'd have to add some extra fields. But if you want to do like parent-child, right? So you can kind of, you'd have to kind of have and you can have subtypes as well.
There's a good use case for subtypes right there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's things that could be done, but it's not, and you're not going to get it done probably in the next couple of days. Right?
Yeah, it's not turnkey at this point. So our main point here is that there are a few different ways it could be done. It is possible to track, but it's not turnkey like the metering and application controller.
Yep, where it's checkbox and you're good to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good question,
Good question, though. All right.
Thank you.
So any other questions here? We're quite a bit over here, but lots of good questions. So I like to keep the conversation going when I can, but don't see anything else.
Nothing here?
Go ahead, Warren.
Okay, yes. We haven't really delved into the software catalog because we kind of thought there was some false positives based on CAB files. We have a lot of systems that just have all the software loaded in CABs, but they're not really installed. So we kind of just figured, well, it's just going to read everything. Is there a way to ignore those?
As far as I understand, it's got to be installed for it to show up in software catalog.
Yeah, it may pick up just to speak on the cabs and executables, it may show up in the uncatalogued section, but that part that's not really live and reportable as is. I mean, if you want it to be in the software catalog, as Andrew showed earlier, you can add it there manually. But you don't have to worry about those thousands of executables and cabs and everything else just sitting on the machines actually being counted as, being.
Well, I guess we were getting a lot of the stock games showing up, and we figured, well, we had group policies removing those. Maybe we need to double check that. But we were just writing it off to the fact that there was CAB files. So I don't know for a fact that that's the reason.
Right. Yeah. So I would take a good, get a machine, apply all the policies necessary, look to see if they're there, if they're uninstalled, then come into, a device, right? And I'll just, choose this guy here. It's the machine I'm on right now, right? And you can kind of take a look and see, what discovered software, right, is on that machine. Right, as opposed to installed programs, right? So there might be a difference there, right? See how those are showing up. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's always going to be a difference, but for the specific things you're looking for. Right?
Yeah. Okay, so discovered software is not catalog software.
The discovered software is just that's the software catalog and what has been discovered on this machine.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll have to look at it closer. I wasn't looking for an answer for that right now. I just thought it just popped in my head.
Sure, that's why. But it's related to the topic at hand, so that's good. All right, no problem. Have a good day. Excellent. All right, so I don't see any other questions. Looks like we've lost most of our attendees at this point. So I guess what I will do is I will kind of wrap things up here. And I would like to thank everyone for coming to today's session. We will have an open forum this Thursday. So if you have any additional questions based on software compliance, licensing, metering, application control, please feel free to come on Thursday. We are still working on our schedule for the rest of the year, so please keep an eye on our KKE registration page, as we will have some sessions coming up there soon. All right, so once again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Have an excellent day, and I will see you next time. All right, bye-bye now.